Hi, Joss. How are you, my friend? Good
I'm doing
afternoon.
well. How are you, Enzo and Federica?
As you can see, very busy. We been a little bit longer.
Yep.
The audience was interacting, but now you have all the time you need, even longer than we were planning. So you can start. Maybe you can start to introduce yourself, and then we
Absolutely.
start your
Yep.
masterclass.
Great. Awesome. Well, thanks very much for having me today again. First of all, my name is Jos Schaap. I'm the CEO and co-founder at Roomdex. And Roomdex is a company focusing on automated room upsell and other upsell components. And that's the topic I will be talking about. Prior to Roomdex, I was CEO and founder of Stay in Touch. And prior to that, I worked for 18 years at Micros, which is now Oracle Hospitality, where I was running the Opera product development and engineering. Thank you.
Cool. Right. So at this point, I'm start to share your presentation. Just a quick note. This is not going to be now a product pitch, guys. This is a pure masterclass. It's going to be great. Really, don't miss it and keep watching. Okay, time's up.
All right. Thank you very much. Good. So before I go into the details of upselling and how to do that and when to do it and when not to do it, first a quick thing. If you want to follow and learn more about upselling, feel free to go to our LinkedIn page, sign up on our website using on roomdex.io, or contact me in person. My email is jos@roomdex.io. What am I going to talk about today? So the masterclass is around upselling. So don't just sell, but upsell. I'm going to talk about a few things around important components that have to do and can improve your upsell programs in the hotel. Topics I will be discussing is the guest buying tension arc, which is the work and the flow of the thinking of a guest as he or she books a trip to go to a hotel. I'm going to talk about sunk cost, a bit of an old economic term that I think is very important, especially as it relates to upselling premium rooms at a lower price. I'm going to talk about the principles of upselling. I will be discussing what to upsell and when to upsell that. Of course, it's important that if you have a program that you can measure that program. So I'll be talking about some KPIs that can help with that. And then I'll summarize all of it in some takeaways. This whole thing should take about 15 minutes. And hopefully it'll be useful for you guys to learn about. Before I get back into the whole upselling thing, we've been talking for the last 2 hours mostly about the booking component, acquisition, around revenue management in that area. That's of course very important. First of all, you need to get a guest to come to your hotel, which is going to be very difficult in the foreseeable time. There's probably going to be a lot of price and demand reduction. So you probably have to bring that customer to your hotel at a lower price than you normally would want to, which I think you can eliminate or reduce if you add to that a revenue enhancement program which focuses on upsells and upgrades. In other words, you bring the guest into the hotel, you get him to book first, and then as he has booked, you start adding communications to the guest journey, prior to arrival, during stay, and afterwards, in order to get more revenue from that particular guest. So with that, I'm going to bring it to the guest tension arc. And this is a very important component along the way of the trip that the guest has. So as you can see here, there's a few waves of excitement, as you can see. It begins, of course, with doing the research of finding the hotel to go to, book that particular hotel. The guest usually tries to book a hotel at the rate that he or she can afford at that point in time. So let's say if the maximum is $150 for that guest, he'll probably book a room around that value. Once the guest has booked that room, there's obviously the excitement of I have my presentation, I have my room booked, I'm in a good spot. It's not a very good time right away after that to offer something else. So you have to give time to kind of celebrate. And as the guest gets closer to arrival, so let's say couple days before, there is this excitement of I'm going to go to the hotel. Is there maybe something else I might want to buy? And you can help the guest understanding what he or she needs by communicating to the guest through various ways, upsell opportunities, such as a room upgrade, early arrival, and those likes of things. Once the guest has checked in, there is again this like, I have what I want. Now I want to just settle into the hotel. I want to relax. And as soon as the guest is in the hotel a little longer, this excitement returns of, oh, what else could I do, or what else could I get to have a good time in this hotel? So there's another upsell opportunity rising up. So as you can see here, there's multiple areas in which the guest is interested in buying something. But again, the timing of when you communicate those to the guest is going to be important. Now, as you saw, these multiple times that the guest is interested in buying something, there's also the term guest wallet. So, and what you want to do is understanding the guest wallet size. And as I mentioned earlier, the guest has a certain wallet set for booking the room, and then has a certain wallet set for adding other things as as the trip and as the stay at the hotel goes along. So what's really important, I think, is to understand the guest wallet size. And it's really the amount of money that the guest is willing to spend on any purchase they make. And the guest wallet size can be one size, but it can also be brought down into multiple sizes. And guests also tend to forget, once they've purchased one thing, let's say the room of $150, they tend to forget a few days later that they've already purchased that, and their appetite to maybe get a slightly more expensive room starts to increase. So in hotels, we focus very often on maximizing the room and products. So we focus on rates and we focus on room. But maybe one thing to think about also, and this is where upselling also comes in, is to focus on the guest's wallet take. So how can I maximize the wallet that I take from that guest into my hotel? So understanding that in more detail basically means that you try to separate the wallet size. And this goes back to the tension arc that I showed you earlier. The guest has multiple areas during its stay in which they are interested in buying something, and they tend to forget what they already previously purchased at what price. So once they've bought something at $150, 6 or 7 days later, they may think, well, maybe a $25 more, which is a lot less than $175 the first time around, I might be willing to buy something. So you're trying to basically take from the guest's wallet in separate steps rather than trying to do it all up front. So if you don't have any upsell programs, all you get from the guest is the initial room product and nothing else. Another thing that's really important when you have upsell, or sell in general for that matter, is you have to make sure you don't have too much choice. You can see here on the left a very large supermarket with lots of choices on dressing and anything else, and it can become pretty overwhelming to decide, which one do I buy? They're all priced roughly the same. They're all the same in ingredients. Only difference is really the label. And as you can see on the right, there is this graph that shows the more choices you have, the least likely it is that the guest actually will buy something. So if you keep the choices to a minimum, let's say 3 to 5 or something like that, you have a higher certainty that the guest will actually buy something. So keep that in mind for the next few slides. Now, I think one important part, and I think that's a really important part for hotels and hoteliers, is to understand the concept of sunk cost. So what that really means, that's money that you have already spent. In other words, if you build a hotel, you remodel a hotel, or you fix up all the rooms, or you basically have the spent on your, the fixed spent on your hotel rooms is already set. So whether you spent that money on a regular room or a premium room, the money that you've spent on each of these rooms and each of that square foot, you have already spent. So in other words, when you try to sell, you should ignore that cost. I mean, not entirely, but you should not think about it when you actually try to sell rooms. And how do I explain that? Here you have an example of let's say the rate of a standard room and a suite room. Now, if you assume that in the standard room, the cleaning cost is $25, and in the suite, it's $30, so it's only $5 more, then the margin of a standard room at $200 is $175. If you cannot sell your suite, which happens very often, premium rooms stay empty most of the time in hotels because hotels tend to stay and focus on the higher premium rates. They rather sell one of those than, let's say, 10 of a few. So if you look at the left on the standard, if you then say a few days before arrival, you offer that suite for $25 more, which means your total take on that guest is going to be $225. You have now slightly increased variable cost of $5. Your total margin is now $195. So you're adding basically $20 of margin for every guest that buys an upgrade of $25 into your premium rooms. Now, if you add that up, you do that, let's say 5 per day, and you do that 365 days a year, that's almost $37,000 in additional margin, or it would cover selling 209 room nights. No, but the important part of that is that's actually pure margin. There is no commission attached to it. It's pure, it's profit for you. So what you see here with sunk cost, if you kind of take that in mind when you try to upsell into premium rooms, the idea really is that you lower your price to increase the overall margin you take from that guest. So to kind of summarize that, break with I must sell premium at premium rates, focus on maximizing revenue per square foot or per square meter rather than per room type, and don't lose an opportunity to make money, because even that $20 extra is pure margin for you and therefore money. So another thing to really think about with upselling is the overall profit margin and the fulfillment. If you look at room products, those have a very high profit margin. And if you look at ancillary products, they have a much lower product margin, and they're also much harder to fulfill. It takes somebody to deliver the breakfast, it takes somebody to deliver the bottle of champagne, and so on. So when you think about an upsell program, think about profit margin and fulfillment and what's easier to do, i.e. room products are a very good start to begin an upsell program with. If you look at in the line here, so if you go over the path basically from booking to check-in to check-out, then prior to check-in, it would be good to focus on room products because they have a high margin and they're easy to fulfill. During the stay, of course, the room has already been sold. You should focus on, in that particular moment, on auxiliary products. And then towards the end of the stay, you can increase some more margin by trying to sell a late departure. So the importance of upselling is that you create multiple kind of wallet opportunities. You create multiple opportunities in which you can take some money from the guest. It can help you to increase your revenue and your ADR, and it can really eliminate lots of your sunk costs. So you can basically create much more margin and therefore higher profit. Guests also like it, actually. Guests like it when you reach out to them at the right time, with the right offer at the right price. They don't mind paying because they appreciate the fact that you paid attention to them for something that they may want to buy. As I said, they don't mind paying for any extras, and it helps you filling your premium rooms. It helps you making more money per square meter or square foot than you would normally do if you stay focused on the separation of premium and standard all the time. So the principles of upselling, the first part of digital upselling is that you have to have an engine that's fully integrated with the PMS. So that engine focuses on what do I sell and what price to who and when. All of that has to be automated with all the data and all the guests, roaming around and all the channels guests book the room from. It's important that that sort of a tool can do that manually for you. Then when it comes to reaching out, you make sure that the offer is simple, it's personal, and it's okay to do it multiple times. There is often this thinking that too many emails is not good. That's correct if those emails are not relevant to the guest's stay. But if they're relevant to the guest's stay or the period in which he's traveling to the hotel, then it can be very effective. Then you make sure that you target choice. So you give the guest a few options, not too many, that the system believes would fit this particular guest. And then at the end of it, you want to make sure you can measure the whole thing. So you create accountability by introducing KPIs and reporting tools. So you make sure you have a process that have all of these things in place. So what to upsell when? I think I mentioned some of it already earlier. Pre-arrival, I think a good thing would be to focus on room products. They're much easier to kind of activate and get going. They have a very high margin, and it's usually also where the guest puts his or her focus on prior to arrival. So prior to arrival, focus on upgrade, early arrival, and late departure. You could also add things like parking, which again have a very high margin and are relevant to the guest arriving at the hotel. Once the hotel is checked, guest has checked in, or maybe at check-in, you could attempt a room upgrade, but it becomes harder. There's usually less rooms available. The conversation takes long at the desk. So one thing you could do there for lunch is breakfast, because that's something hotels guests probably will have the next day and the days they stay at the hotel. During stay, it would be very useful to focus on auxiliary items such as spa, food, anything that you think the hotel can provide an upsell. You should offer during stay, and you should do that digitally, ideally a few hours after the guest has checked in. And of course, the night before departure, try to offer late departure. This is basically 100% margin, because if you were to sell a late checkout for, let's say, $30, it doesn't cost you anything extra whether the room is being cleaned at 11 a.m. or at 3 p.m. So contrary to general belief, and this is something I wanted to also bring forward, is guests love to pay for early arrival and late departure. So make sure you include those, and I think it's very important to include those as part of your digital upsell process. Offer digital, it avoids the conversation at the front desk, which can become very awkward in some cases when you talk about early arrival and late departure. Guests love it if it's guaranteed and if you can fulfill it, which is very difficult to achieve manually. It's very hard to know, do I have enough rooms available for early arrival or late departure? And also automatically, you need to have ensure that the system is two-way connected, that there's full integration, and it's really clear what the occupancy in the hotel is. And of course, as I mentioned, it's 100% margin revenue. Upsell enhancements and ancillaries during stay, of course, that's something you should do. It's additional revenue. It's been talked about in today's session multiple times. It helps hotels revenue increase. The margin is a little lower. Guests also like it when you give them the right thing at the right time. They love the attention, and again, they don't mind paying for it. So make sure those offers are informative. Offer it usually post check-in. Give the guests some opportunity to kind of enjoy their check-in, go to their room, and feel relaxed before you start offering them other opportunities or things they could do in the hotel. And make sure when you do auxiliaries, you have a very good fulfillment process in place to deliver on it. Now, if you put all of this together, you want to know, is my upsell program working well? Do I make progress with it? Do I increase revenue? So a couple of new KPIs that you could think about is the revenue per exposed guests, which basically is the revenue that you generate from every guest that you have contacted through sending him or her, for example, an email. If you see that increasing, then you know that the value of your offer is better, basically. In other words, the whole thing comes together. If every guest receives an email, and if you, for example, generate revenue, let's say $3, $5, $6, $7, $8 per email that you send a guest, then you can assume that the overall program that you have, so from the program itself to the number of emails, to the clicks, to the way the offer looks, to the way the teaser looks, are getting into the right direction, because the whole thing as a whole generates more revenue per email that you send. If you want to focus, for example, on the offer itself, so is the offer page that I'm providing converting, and is it working well, then you can think of a KPI called RevPie, which is basically the revenue per offer viewed. So each person that actually physically looks at the offer and then the total revenue divided by that number of people. Other KPIs that are really important are click-through rates, conversion, average upsell, average early arrival, average late departure, and of course ROI. Those things, if you put those in your, in your like daily or weekly reporting, you'll have a good grasp of your upsell process, and you'll make sure that it will give you benefits. So if I recap, what makes upselling work, the first, and I think one of the most important things, is set aside your premium published rates. Think about sunk cost, as I talked about earlier, which will allow you to maximize margin and maximize revenue per square foot rather than per room category, because it's all about that. I think you want to make money, as much money as you have spent and have available in the hotel. Make sure you have multiple communications. Divide the communications also pre-arrival, during, and then towards the end of arrival. Within those, make sure that you offer the right products. Multiple communications allow the guests to buy multiple times, which gives you a greater wallet share and therefore more revenue that you take from that guest. The right order in which to offer upselling is first the room upgrade, second early arrival, third start offering services, and at the end you can offer late departure. And you don't have to give all 4 of them all the time to every guest. Again, a good system will figure out which ones to offer what at what time. I think most important is to ensure you can automate most of this. All of you during COVID have, of course, reduced staff. There's a lot less people to fulfill all these things. So you want to ensure that the system that does upselling can do the pricing and the fulfillment to a large extent fully automated for you. And make sure that you implement a few of the KPIs so you can measure and focus and control on what everybody is doing for you and how the process and the program is working for you. And with that, I've come to the end of this masterclass. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Josh. Amazing. I mean, I never seen something like that. It's very interesting, especially the KPI part. So cool. Very cool. Very cool.
Thank you.
Let me open the webcam to my colleagues, my friends, and we've been waiting and watching on a backstage. And I know that Harry has a question for you, Josh. Go ahead, Harry.
Okay. Hey, Jo, thank you. This was a great masterclass. Really enjoyed listening to your presentation.
Thank you.
The question that came up in my mind is that obviously, without talking about specific products, but more about the process of connecting an upselling application to the PMS. How does that work? What should a hotelier know about that? And what are the critical success factors for that?
I mean, if you want to maximize automation, then I think a full two-way is kind of key to that, because it eliminates the hotel staff having to enter the upsell offer that you sold, and it allows the upsell engine itself, whichever vendor that is, to determine, is there actually rooms available? Is there availability for early arrival? Is there availability for late departure? That really requires two-way interaction and automated quick response back to the PMS. So I think if you want to get into upselling digitally, you need to make sure that you buy a solution that's fully connected two-way to the PMS, which basically means collecting all the data to determine the offer, and then secondly, returning the full fulfillment back into the PMS so that you as a hotel don't have to worry about manual follow-up and processes to complete the fulfillment.
Cool.
Thank you.
Chris, Federica, I know you like this particular topic. Do you have a question?
I have a curiosity that is about the trend that you showed, that there is a lot of interest from the guests in early departure and late arrival. And I would like to ask you if you noticed a different trend in the luxury segment. For example, I ask you this because I have been working in the luxury for years, and what I noticed is that customers are willing to pay, but in the luxury segment, they feel like this service should be given for free because it's like part of the luxury treatment. And I would like to know if you notice the same, if there is a different trend, or if you say go also in the luxury, you give this recommendation,
Yeah, it's a very good point. I mean, if I look amongst our customers, which are all the way from luxury to, let's say, standard business hotels or roadside hotels, we've seen the uptake of early arrival and late departure in all hotels, the willingness to buy for it. I think there is a lot of perception for hoteliers that even if you pay a lot of money for a room, that you should get an early arrival and late departure for free, which may be true if you spend $6,000, $8,000, $9,000 on a suite. Maybe that's the case, but ultimately, if somebody can stay longer, they in general are willing to pay for that. I think it's a lot of it is a perception of the hotelier themselves that they think it should be for free. Now, what you could do is something in between, and that is, if the digital upsell tool works well, you could say, okay, I'm going to give this guest that's is worth this value for me an early, or let's say a late departure for free for the first 2 or 3 hours. If he wants to stay longer, then I'm going to give it to him at 50% of what I would have a normal guest pay for that. That you could also do. So I think trying to get money without, without pulling it out of the guest's wallet is nothing wrong with that, because you're providing value to a guest. And I think a good upsell tool should look at also what did the guest book the room at, and what is the rate value of today, when he checks out, for example.
Great, thank you. I confirm that this is exactly what I had in place.
Mm-hmm.
Next one, Chris.
Really fantastic presentation, Jos. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Upselling was somewhat my entry into revenue management many years ago, so it's a topic very close to my heart. For a lot of hotels, I think, who have not yet implemented upsell technology, they may have upsell at the front desk, the traditional way, but they haven't implemented any technology. Given that resources, especially now, are limited, where do you think they should start to get the process going?
I think the easiest way, kind of mentioned that in the presentation already, or kind of was leaning towards that, would be with room upgrades or potentially early arrival and late departure. Because the margin is basically, it's almost 100%. You have to pay the upgrade vendor, for example, us a little bit. Cleaning the extra cost of cleaning the slightly bigger room is marginal in most cases, unless you give the guest a 3-bedroom suite instead of a standard room. But in general, it's marginal, so it doesn't really add a lot of cost to your operations. And if you have it fully two-way integrated, then you can almost be assured that your upsell system sells something that you can actually guarantee deliver. So you don't have to worry about not being able to fulfill and write it all off. So I think room upgrades and early arrival and late departure are great ways of generating additional revenue quickly.
Thank you very much. Yeah, that's great.
Josh, I have a question here from Arthur. Great point, Josh. Many thanks for this presentation. Is there any additional upsell method you can recommend to our service apartment?
Oh, that's a good question. We have a few service apartments as customers. I'm not so sure what I would do. And the one thing that we are looking to see how we could do something with that is some of these places today are also used as like a workspace, so they're rented out during the day. So you could maybe, if you have a service department or any hotel for that matter that has a room capacity to do that, you could also figure out maybe a package that you could offer your room, in addition to sleeping there at night, during the day as a workspace, something like that maybe. But other than that, I think it should, the service departments can follow pretty much the upsell process that's in place in hotels and sort of what I went through. Hopefully that helps a little bit.
Well, anyway, just in case, guys, get in touch with Josh. I know Josh has a lot of, can provide a lot of feedback on that. And apart that, of course, showing your product, so would be the great solution. Right, so before we end up, guys, I just want to remind the audience that this is the second episode of a long series of 8. And let me share with you again the video, so in this way you get to know more about the next stage and terms of the series. 1 second, and we'll be back.